I want you to imagine a very specific moment in time. Think about a quiet, clean mortgage office in Houston, Texas. A woman named Sarah is sitting across from a loan officer. Sarah is anxious. She earns $90,000 a year, has low debt, and has worked hard for 5 years to save a down payment for her first home. She feels proud but nervous about the interest rate she might get. She knows her financial history isn't perfect, but she hopes her recent responsibility is enough. The loan officer types some information into his computer and looks at Sarah. He delivers the news. Her credit score is 630. In today's market, that score qualifies her for an interest rate of 8% on a 30-year loan for a $350,000 house. Sarah tries to do the math quickly. In her head, she realizes her monthly payment is going to be much higher than she thought, hundreds of dollars higher. She feels a physical knot in her stomach. Sarah quietly accepts the rate, believing she has failed somehow, that she just isn't good at managing money, and that this high cost is her punishment. Now, I want you to look at a man named Mike. Mike is sitting in a similar mortgage office in the same city of Houston, applying for the exact same $350,000 loan. Mike also makes $90,000 a year and has identical debt to Sarah, but Mike feels confident. The loan officer types in Mike's details and smiles. Mike's credit score is 740. Because he is in the high credit bracket, Mike is quoted an interest rate of 6.5%. His monthly payment for principal and interest is nearly $350 less than Sarah's. On the surface, it doesn't look like a critical situation. Sarah might just skip a few dinners out or maybe work a little harder to make that higher payment. But look at what happens over the full 30 years of that loan. Because Sarah quietly accepted that 8% interest rate, she will pay over $128,000 more in interest than Mike did for the exact same house. That's $128,000 gone forever, simply because of a 3-digit number. Sarah is left feeling defeated, crushed under the weight of unnecessary wealth destruction. Sarah assumes Mike is just more responsible than she is. She assumes Mike has never made a financial mistake, that he's better at saving, that he has some special talent for money that she lacks. But what if I tell you that Sarah and Mike are virtually identical in their financial behavior? What if I tell you that Sarah isn't actually bad with money, and that Mike isn't a financial genius? The only difference between Sarah paying an extra $128,000 and Mike saving that fortune isn't financial responsibility, it's knowledge. Mike knows a fundamental secret that Sarah missed. He understands that the entire American credit reporting system is not a reflection of his morality or his worth as a human being. Mike knows it is just a game, a mathematical prediction designed by private companies to tell banks how likely he is to pay them back, and like any game, this algorithmic system has specific rules that the financial industry often keeps opaque, hidden, and intentionally confusing for the average person. Banks actually rely on people like Sarah not knowing these rules. They make billions of dollars every single year from consumers who quietly accept higher interest rates because they are too embarrassed or too confused to question the 3-digit number on the screen. The financial industry loves the fact that most everyday earners have no idea how their score is actually calculated. This lack of clarity is essential to their business model. But deep within the bureaucracy of this very system, there is a legitimate mechanism hidden in plain sight, a loophole that industry insiders almost never discuss with consumers. This mechanism isn't a magic trick, and it is not about exploiting illegal glitches or lying on federal documents. It is a legitimate, legal way to force the credit reporting system to treat you with absolute fairness based on rules already established by law. Banks hope you never discover this, because when you do, they lose their ability to overcharge you for loans, cars, and even insurance. My own experience analyzing these massive financial systems has taught me that the biggest enemy to wealth building isn't low income. It is ignorance of how the game is actually played. That's exactly why we created Marset. We exist to clear up the confusion around personal finance, self-investing, and money management. We break down these complicated market trends and wealth-building strategies into simple steps, helping you take full, intelligent control of your financial future. We want you to stop overpaying for everything and start building long-term financial stability, just like Mike did. To start making this legal loophole work for your own financial standing, you first have to understand the myth that most people believe to be true. They believe their credit score is a permanent financial report card reflecting who they are. They believe that fixing a bad score must be a sluggish, dramatic process taking years of painful waiting, and that checking their own score will somehow damage it further. Let's bust that myth right now. Checking your own credit score through a soft inquiry never ever hurts your score. It's actually one of the smartest self-investments you can make because it gives you the raw data you need to make informed decisions. The financial system wants you to be afraid to look because they want you to remain passive, quietly accepting whatever rate they hand you. So what exactly is this 3-digit number that causes so much stress? To do a deep analysis of the FICO illusion, you first need to understand that there isn't just one credit score. There are dozens of them. You have different scores for mortgage lending, auto lending, and credit card approvals. However, the model that most most us lenders actually use for major decisions is the FICO score, created by the Fair Isaac Corporation. I want to give you a direct explanation of what this number truly represents to a bank. It is not a measurement of your worth as a U.S. citizen. It is not a moral report card. A FICO score is a mathematical probability. Specifically, it predicts how likely you are to become 90 days late on any credit obligation within the next 24 months. That's it. To the bank, a person with a 630 score has a statistically higher probability of missing payments than someone with a 740 score. It's not personal. It's just a math problem solving for bank risk. And where does FICO get the data to make this calculation? They get it from the three major credit reporting agencies in the United States: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Here is an essential industry secret that banks hope you miss. A common misconception among everyday earners is that these three bureaus are government agencies designed to keep accurate records for public safety. They are not. They are private, for-profit corporations that make billions of dollars by selling your financial data to lenders, insurance companies, and even employers. You are not their customer. You are their product. These three companies are fierce competitors and rarely communicate with each other. This is exactly why you might have a 700 score on Experian but a 680 score on TransUnion. One bank might report your perfect payment history to Equifax, but a debt collector might only report a negative collection item to TransUnion. Because these bureau systems are automated and process billions of pieces of data every single day, mistakes are not just common. They are an absolute certainty. My analysis of financial data has shown that the system is built for speed, not accuracy. A widely cited study by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, a U.S. government agency, found that over 25% of Americans found material errors on their credit reports that could negatively affect their score. Think about that. 1 in 4 people is overpaying for loans right now simply because of a database typo or an automated system error. Your name might be similar to someone who filed for bankruptcy in another state. A credit card company might have closed your account but reported it as closed by grantor, which implies they dropped you as a risky customer. A medical bill you already paid might still be sitting on your report as an active collection. You might ask, why don't these massive profitable companies work harder to ensure accuracy if their entire business relies on data? The direct explanation is simple. It is not profitable for them to care about your specific accuracy until you force them to. Under U.S. federal law, these bureaus are required to investigate disputes, but they handle 85% of these disputes through automated, offshore systems that are incentivized to process cases as quickly as possible, often rubber stamping the bank's original data without human review. The bureaus get paid by lenders to furnish data, and banks use that data to implement what they call risk-based pricing. This is the friendly industry term for charging lower-income people more money for the same products. If the bureaus provided perfect, accurate data that created high 700 scores for every hard-working American, the banking industry would lose billions in interest revenue every single year. They rely on the opacity of this system to maintain their profits, capitalizing on your assumption that the data is always correct. The legitimate loophole isn't about tricking a computer into giving you points you don't deserve. It's about understanding that the computer is often wrong and using the law to force a private corporation to respect your financial data. Banks and bureaus are counting on you being too lazy or too confused to question them. They build a story in their mind that people with low scores are disorganized or irresponsible, creating a narrative that makes Sarah in Houston accept an 8% interest rate without fight. But if you are willing to learn the rules of this game, you can dismantle that narrative piece by piece. You can stop viewing your credit report as a permanent history and start viewing it for what it legally is: a collection of data that must be 100% verifiable and accurate. This is where the shift from passive acceptance to active self-investment begins. Here is the pivot point. This is where we move from understanding the problem to executing the solution. The legitimate loophole that banks hope you miss is not found in a shady back-end computer program. It is found in a piece of U.S. federal legislation passed by Congress in 1970. It is called the Fair Credit Reporting Act, or the FCRA. I am going to give you some raw information that will change how you view your financial data forever. The FCRA explicitly dictates that you, as a U.S. consumer, have the right to accuracy, fairness, and privacy of the information in your credit file. This law places a heavy burden of proof not on you, but on the credit bureaus and the banks that furnish them data. Section 611 of the FCRA states that if you dispute the completeness or accuracy of any item in your file, the credit bureau must conduct a free, reasonable investigation to verify that information. They generally have exactly 30 days to do this. Here is the critical part of that law that creates the loophole. If they cannot verify that the information is 100% accurate, complete, and verifiable within that time frame, they are legally required to delete it from your report entirely. Let that sink in for a moment. The law does not say an item must stay on your report just because you actually owed the money at some point. It says it can only stay on your report if the bank or debt collector can prove, with documentary evidence, confidence that every single detail they are reporting about that debt is perfectly accurate today. If they cannot produce the original signed contract, the complete payment history, or the exact breakdown of fees and interest within 30 days, that negative item must go away. Banks know this. Debt collectors know this, and they rely on the fact that everyday earners have no idea this right exists. Now let's look at why the standard advice for fixing credit is a boring, sluggish process that rarely works. If you go online to Experian or TransUnion and click the dispute button next to a collection, you are playing their game by their rules. When you do that, your detailed complaint gets converted into a simple 2-digit code by an automated system called eOscar. That code might mean not mine or incorrect amount. The system then sends that tiny code to the debt collector. The debt collector's computer looks at their own database, sees your name, and hits a button that says verified. That's the entire investigation 90% of the time. The bureau tells you they verified the debt, and you are left feeling defeated, assuming the information must be true because a computer said so. This automated process is designed for speed and bank profit, not for your accuracy. But a self-investor who understands the law takes a completely different professional approach. Instead of clicking buttons online, they utilize physical, typed letters sent via certified mail with a return receipt requested. This creates a legal paper trail that a database cannot ignore. When a bureau receives a physical letter detailing specific violations of the FCRA, it frequently forces a human being to actually look at the file because their automated systems cannot easily process unique physical documents. The strategy isn't to lie and say, "I never had this debt." The strategy is to demand proof, using legal terminology that signals you are literate in consumer law. You shift the conversation from a plea for mercy to a demand for legal compliance. My deep analysis of these bureaucratic systems has shown that collection agencies often buy thousands of debts for pennies on the dollar as bulk data. They rarely possess the original contracts, complete statements, or proper chain of assignment paperwork needed to legally verify the debt under the FCRA. When they receive a formal validation demand from a literate consumer, they often choose to delete the item rather than spend the money and time trying to locate documents they likely never received in the first place. This is Wealth Building Strategy 101. It is about defending your assets, and your financial data is one of your most valuable assets. While banks might try to build a story that this process is only for people trying to get out of their responsibilities, the reality is that $128,000 of Sarah's money in Houston was at stake. Taking full control of your financial future means forcing these billion-dollar corporations to respect the laws that Congress put in place to protect you. The story banks tell is that credit repair is complicated, shady, and only done by desperate people. But when you understand the mechanics of the FCRA, the story changes. It becomes a direct explanation of your legal rights. It becomes a methodical, simple step toward long-term stability, while removing negative items is critical. It is only half of the equation for financial stability. In the next section, we are going to look at the other, much faster way that Mike utilized to build his high score through pure raw mathematics. While cleaning up mistakes from the past is essential, it addresses only one aspect of your financial stability. Many everyday earners believe that removing negative items is the only way to significantly increase their score. This is a story that keeps people feeling stuck, assuming they just have to wait out the clock on old debts. But there is a second mechanism within this mathematical game that functions almost instantly. It is based on pure, raw numbers and data. Reporting cycles and utilizing it is another legitimate loophole that banks hope you miss. I am going to give you a direct explanation of this optimization strategy. It doesn't require you to settle any debts, and it has nothing to do with disputing accurate information. It is simply about understanding how the FICO algorithm treats the data that is currently sitting in your positive accounts. To execute this, you must first master a fundamental concept that the banking industry keeps intentionally confusing: the critical difference between your payment due date and your statement closing date. We are going to build a scenario in our mind for better understanding. Let's look at a typical credit card. You receive an email saying your payment due date is the 25th of every single month. Like most responsible consumers, you use the card throughout the month and pay the full balance on the 24th, just before the deadline. You feel financially responsible because you are avoiding interest charges, and you assume the bank tells the credit bureaus that you have a zero balance. But you would be absolutely wrong. In nearly every case, that is not the story the bank tells. The financial system is built to report data, not behavior. Approximately 3 to 5 days after your payment due date, your billing cycle ends. This is called your statement closing date. Whatever balance is on your card at midnight on that specific closing date is the exact number that the bank reports to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. This subtle reporting gap causes millions of us consumers to overpay for loans. Even if you pay your card off in full every single month, if you use your card heavily right up until that closing date, the algorithm thinks you are constantly maxed out. My deep analysis of these financial systems shows that this is where a vast majority of points are lost for people people who are otherwise good with money. This is because your debt-to-credit ratio, often called utilization, accounts for 30% of your entire FICO score. It is the second most important factor, right behind payment history. The math is brutal. If the algorithm sees high utilization, it registers high risk, and your score plummets, often by 50 to 100 points in a single month. The friendly advice you usually hear from experts is to keep your utilization under 30%, but that is just a story meant to keep your score in the average range. If your goal is long-term wealth stability, you don't want average. You want the lowest possible cost of capital. My own experience analyzing this numerical game has taught me that high credit bracket self-investors utilize the true mathematical loophole. They make the algorithm work for them, not the bank. The golden rule for maximizing your score is keeping your reported utilization between 1% and 3%, and you achieve this by changing when you pay your bill, not how much you pay. Let me give you the simple steps to execute this perfectly. First, log into your online portal and locate your statement closing date. It is rarely the same day as your due date. It might be the first of the month. Second, set a reminder for 3 days before that closing date. Third, go into your account and pay off almost the entire balance, leaving just a small amount like $15 or $20 on the card. 3 days later, when the clock strikes midnight on your statement closing date, the bank reports to the bureaus that you owe $15 on a card with, for example, a $5,000 limit. This represents 0.3% utilization. Then, when your actual payment due date arrives weeks later, you pay that final $15 to ensure you pay no interest. To the FICO algorithm, this data stream looks like perfection. It signals that you are an active, responsible user of credit who has nearly zero risk of defaulting. Because the algorithm recalculates your score every time a new balance is reported, you can often see a 20-50-point boost within just 30 days of applying this raw math to your accounts. There is even an advanced method for optimizing this further, often called all zero except one or ASIO. A deep analysis of FICO data suggests that the highest scores are achieved when you have all your revolving credit cards reporting a zero balance on their respective closing dates, with only one major bank card reporting that tiny 1-3% utilization. The reasoning behind this is that having a tiny balance on just one card signals controlled management, whereas zero balances on every single card can sometimes look like inactivity, which the algorithm treats with slight suspicion. Think about how powerful this knowledge is for everyday earners. It is not about having more money. Sarah and Mike in Houston had identical income. This is about knowing how to time the movement of the money you already have. It is about understanding that a credit score is just a game of numerical inputs, and you can legitimately control those inputs once you understand the timeline that banks hope you miss. This direct explanation of reporting dates versus due dates is a critical self-investment that creates financial stability faster than almost any other strategy. While optimization of current accounts is rapid, a self-investor who is playing the long game knows that they must also defend what they have built. In the next section, we are going to look at how to navigate the most dangerous zone of personal finance, dealing with debt collectors without destroying the hard work you've just done. Up until now, we have focused heavily on how to fix mistakes from the past and how to optimize the accounts you already have. This is essential for financial stability, but it assumes you already have a credit history established. What if you are listening to this and you have no credit score at all? What if you are a recent immigrant to the US, a young person just starting out, or someone who has historically only used cash and is now labeled as credit invisible by the bureaus? I want to speak directly to you. This is a story that millions of us citizens face every year. You might have a great income, substantial savings, and zero debt, but because a private corporation's computer doesn't have enough data to run its math, you are treated like a high-risk ghost. You face the same high interest rates and loan denials as Sarah did in Houston, not because you are bad with money, but because you don't exist in the system. The friendly yet inaccurate advice you often hear is to just go get a credit card and start using it. But that is impossible advice to follow. No major bank will give a normal credit card to someone with zero credit history. It is a catch-22 designed by the banking industry that keeps everyday earners locked out of wealth building. They hope you remain frustrated and passive, but a literate self-investor knows that there are specific tactical methods to build credit from scratch, using established rules that the financial industry often glosses over. I am going to give you a simple step-by-step guide to executing this. This professional approach isn't about dramatic risk. It is about methodical, planned self-investment. To build credit safely and rapidly, sophisticated financial planners often suggest beginning with a financial tool that is misunderstood by most beginners: the secured credit card. A direct explanation of how this works reveals why it is the perfect starting point for long-term stability. With a normal unsecured card, the bank trusts you with their money. With a secured card, you provide the trust in the form of a cash deposit, usually between $200 and $500. That deposit becomes your credit limit. This eliminates risk for the bank. If you miss payments, they just take your deposit. But because it is legally a credit card, the bank is required to report your payment activity to Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion every single month by placing a small recurring subscription, like a Netflix bill, on that secured card and paying it in full every single month. You build a perfect payment history over 6 to 12 months. It is a simple step that transforms you from credit invisible to credit established, and many banks will eventually return your deposit and graduate you to a normal, unsecured card. While secured cards are effective, there is another legitimate mechanism that functions through raw math rather than trust, and it is a tactic that can give a beginner's score an exponential boost. This is a story of legal piggybacking, and it is often called becoming an authorized user. Here is how the scenario works in the real world. Suppose your parent, spouse, or relative has a credit card account with a U.S. bank that they have had open for 15 years. This account has a $20,000 limit and a zero balance, and they have never ever made a late payment under established banking rules. They can log into their portal and add you as an authorized user on that account. You do not even need to receive the actual physical card, and you certainly do not need to spend any money, just by the simple act of adding your name to that seasoned, high-quality account. A huge portion of that 15-year positive history gets copied and pasted directly onto your credit report. Overnight, your credit invisible file goes from having zero history to inheriting 15 years of perfect payments and a $20,000 available credit line. To the FICO algorithm, you instantly look like Sarah's neighbor, Mike. This raw data stream creates a high 600 or low 700 score for a beginner almost instantly. It is about understanding that a credit score is just data input, and you can legally input high-quality data. My deep analysis of these financial systems has shown that this is one of the single fastest ways to generate a high score from scratch. However, I have to give you a very direct and critical warning about this tactical loophole. First, the account must be perfectly managed. If your relative maxes out that card, their high utilization gets copied to your report too, destroying your score. Second, I am not done yet. The banking industry hates this authorized user tactic because it creates high scores for people who have unturned them through sluggish years of waiting. Consequently, newer credit scoring models like FICO 8 and 9 have been tweaked to de-weight the impact of authorized user accounts that do not appear to have a legitimate relationship with the primary cardholder. This means that while this tactic is still highly effective for getting started, it is no longer the magic bullet it used to be. The friendly goal is to use this authorized user status to establish your initial score, then immediately open your own secured or beginner unsecured card to start building your own independent history. Think about how empowering this is for a beginner. You are no longer locked out. You are not dependent on a bank to grant you access. By understanding the simple math of authorized users and secured cards, you take control, you build financial stability, you stop accepting the high cost of being credit invisible. Every everyday earner has the right to access this system, and knowledge of these legal loopholes is the key to that access. In the next and perhaps most critical section, we are going to look at the other end of the financial spectrum, how to defend your built-up score and prevent a single collections mistake from destroying your long-term stability. We have just spent a significant amount of time focusing on the positive aspects of financial stability, cleaning up the past, optimizing the present, and building for the future. This is the exciting part of wealth building, but I need to have a very serious, direct conversation with you right now. If you are going to take full control of your financial future, you have to know how to defend what you have built, because there is a danger zone in personal finance that can destroy years of hard work in a single 30-day reporting cycle. I am talking about debt collections. This is a story that causes immediate panic for millions of everyday earners. You might forget about an old gym membership or a final utility bill from an apartment you moved out of 3 years ago, or an unexpected medical copay of $45 that was sent to the wrong address. Suddenly, you receive a harsh letter from a company you've never heard of, demanding payment and threatening to destroy your credit score. The natural, responsible reaction is to panic and want to make it right. You think, I am a responsible person. I will just pay this $50 right now, and the story will be over. But that is perhaps the single most dangerous mistake you can make when dealing with the collection industry, and it is a trap that banks and debt collectors absolutely hope you fall into. I am going to give you the simplest explanation of how the FICO algorithm actually treats collection data. In the eyes of the most common FICO scoring models, the ones used for mortgages and car loans, a paid collection is not better than an unpaid collection. The algorithm registers that a serious delinquency occurred, and your score plummets, often by 50 to 100 points. Here is the brutal industry secret that keeps everyday earners feeling stuck. When you make a partial payment on an old collection, or even pay it in full without a specific agreement, you are often hurting your financial stability more than helping it. This is because you are taking an old, stagnant debt and causing it to update. To the algorithm, it looks like a brand new, active negative event has just occurred today. It is like waking up a sleeping giant just to tell him you're sorry. He's still a giant, and now he is awake and angry. Your date of last activity resets, and that negative marker can depress your score for another 7 long years. Debt collectors know this, and they rely on your ignorance to pressure you into paying. They build a story in your mind that paying them will fix your problem, but their only logical goal is to collect capital, not help your credit history. But there is a legitimate loophole here, based on the rules of contract law, that is a powerful defensive tool for a literate self-investor. It is called the pay-for-delete negotiation. A direct explanation of this strategy reveals why it is a game-changer for long-term stability. You do not just pay the debt collector. Instead, you enter into a negotiation with them. You offer to pay the debt often settled for much less than the full amount, but you only agree to that payment on one mandatory, non-negotiable condition. The collection agency must agree in writing to completely remove the collection trade line from all 3 credit bureaus within 30 days of receiving your funds. This is not a right granted by the FCRA. It is a simple private contract between you and the collection agency. They want your capital, and you want your data cleaned. My own experience analyzing this numerical game has taught me that most collection agencies will gladly accept a pay-for-delete offer because they purchased your debt for pennies on the dollar, and they have no legal obligation to continue reporting the negative information once they have been paid. The key to executing this professional approach perfectly is twofold. First, you never acknowledge that the debt is actually yours. You simply offer to settle an alleged debt to avoid further hassle. Second, I am not done yet. You must get this agreement in writing before you send them even $1 single. A verbal promise from a debt collector over the phone is absolutely worthless. If they refuse to provide a written agreement to delete, a literate self-investor knows it is time to shift tactics back to the FCRA and for verification we discussed earlier, rather than quietly paying to have their score destroyed. Now, while pay-for-delete is a legitimate wealth-building defense, I have to give you a very stern warning about other loopholes you might hear about online. There are predatory credit repair scams promoting illegal hacks like creating a credit privacy number or CPN. This is essentially a story that they can generate a new social security number for you to hide your past. I am going to give you a direct, unfiltered explanation. This is fraud. Using a CPN to apply for credit is a federal crime that can lead to massive fines and jail time. It is wealth destruction in its purest form. There is also no magic software that can remove legitimate, verifiable debt with the click of a button. My deep analysis of these financial systems shows that real financial stability only comes through pure, raw knowledge of the rules and methodical self-investment. Taking shortcuts is what gets people trapped in the cycle of debt to begin with. The legitimate loopholes we are discussing using the FCRA for verification, optimizing reporting, dates through ASIO, and negotiating pay-for-deletes are all based on established laws and raw mathematics. They require effort, patience, and intelligence, but they are the only safe path to taking full control of your financial future and defending the score you have worked so hard to build. In the final section, we are going to look at how to synthesize all this knowledge into a long-term plan that converts a high score into actual wealth. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground together. We have dismantled the myths surrounding credit bureaus, learned the raw mathematics of reporting dates versus due dates, and mastered the legal defensive strategies of verification and negotiation. By now, you should have a direct explanation of how this entire mathematical game is played, and you should feel empowered to take control of your financial standing. But I need to leave you with one final, essential truth about financial stability. A high credit score is not the destination. It is not a trophy to hang on the wall, and it is not a measurement of your worth. A 780 FICO score by itself will not buy you breakfast. A high credit score is simply a financial tool. It is a key that unlocks access to the lowest cost of capital, the true legitimate loophole that banks hope you miss is what you actually do with that access once you have it. This is where wealth building actually begins. This is where the shift from passive consumer to intelligent self-investor happens. To understand the long-term wealth multiplier effect of this knowledge, we have to return one last time to that mortgage office in Houston, Texas, and look at the 30-year journey of Sarah and Mike. You remember that because Mike had a 740 score, he saved nearly $350 every single month on his mortgage payment compared to Sarah, who had a 630 score. Over the 30 years of the loan, Mike saved over $128,000 in interest. Sarah took that extra $350 a month and quietly paid it to the bank, believing that was just the cost of her past mistakes. That capital is gone forever, working to build the bank's wealth, not hers. But Mike took a completely different professional approach. Mike understood that wealth is built through investing capital, not spending it on interest. Mike took that $350 in monthly savings money that Sarah was forced to spend, and he treated it as a committed self-investment. He didn't use it for a nicer car or fancier dinners. He set up an automatic transfer to a brokerage account and invested that $350 every single month into a low-cost S&P 500 index fund. Let's look at the brutal math of that decision. If we assume an average annual return of 8% over those 30 years, Mike's $350 $250 monthly investment grows exponentially. At the end of 30 years, when both Sarah and Mike have paid off their $350,000 homes, Mike looks at his brokerage account. Mike does not just have a paid-off house. He has an additional portfolio worth over $500,000. Same income, same city, same job. The only difference was that Mike viewed his high credit score as a tool to lower his cost of living, which allowed him to increase his rate of investing. Mike utilized low-cost borrowing to build a $500,000 fortune, while Sarah utilized high-cost borrowing to destroy her own wealth. This is the real story of financial stability that the banking industry keeps intentionally confusing. They want you to believe that a credit score is just about getting approved for things. They hope you never connect the dots between a high score, low interest rates, and the ability to invest the difference for your own future. They count on everyday earners remaining focused on monthly payments rather than total interest cost and opportunity cost. My deep analysis of these financial systems has shown that wealth isn't about being lucky or having a massive inheritance. It is about knowledge of these fundamental mechanisms. It is about understanding that everyday earners in the US have access to these exact same loopholes if they are willing to become literate self-investors. You now have that knowledge. You understand how to defend your data using the FCRA, how to optimize your utilization using raw math, and how to utilize low-cost capital to multiply your wealth. The choice is now yours. You can remain passive, accepting whatever financial story the banks build for you, or you can take intelligent control of your financial future. We built Marset for exactly this reason. We break down these complex market trends and wealth-building strategies into simple steps, helping you stop overpaying and start building. If you found this information valuable, the best self-investment you can make right now is to hit the subscribe button and join our community of everyday earners who are taking control. Remember, financial stability is not about how much you make. It is about how much you keep and how intelligently you utilize what you have.